Joining us now to discuss all of these big developments is Bill Muck, a professor of political science from North Central College.
Welcome, Bill. Thanks for coming in, or joining us, I should say, because you're not
Good to
in,
chat with
but
you.
thanks for joining us. Isn't it ironic that in 1968, President Johnson stepped aside and the convention was in Chicago, and the same thing is happening? How do we look at this Democratic convention being different than most?
Well, it is. The parallels are really, really striking. I mean, there are a lot of ways that it's different, but it's the
Right.
fact that it's in Chicago, the fact that the president stepped away. Now, the one difference is that when Johnson stepped away, it was all the way in March, so they had 7 months to figure things out. We've got a much shorter time span here, but I think it should remind us all that politics is crazy and changes, and that's just sort of the world that we live in right now. That sometimes we relive through these really strange cycles.
Bill, I have to ask you, were you surprised at how quickly the Democratic Party sort of got behind the vice president here, or were you thinking that it would have been more of an open contest ahead of the DNC?
Yeah, I thought they were leaning towards more of an open contest, right? I mean, you knew that the chaotic nature of the transition, of getting Biden and the Biden campaign to accept that it was time to move on, it felt like that there was going to be more open, contentious conversation. But it is really stunning. If we think about, a couple days ago, the strength of the Republican Party and the Trump campaign, and then what's happened in the last couple days in terms of getting behind Kamala Harris, the Democratic Party has flipped this election in really, really dramatic ways. Like what's happened in the last 24 hours, it really is historic and sort of stunning as somebody who watches politics.
Let's take a look at the difference between the Republicans now and the Democrats. The Republicans are now the party of Trump, whereas Democrats aren't really the party of anyone right now. It's more inclusive, I would think.
I think this is one of the more interesting storylines that's actually being missed, right? If we look at the strength of each party. So what we saw in the Republicans over the RNC last week was this is really, as you noted, the party of Trump. Trump is dictating the ideology, he's dictating the convention itself, and he's larger than the party. And then what we saw the Democrats is the Democrats said that the party is more important than their candidate. And that is rare to happen in the United States. And so it sets up this stark contrast where the Democrats, the ideology of the Democrats is really driving this process. And on the other side, you've got really a cult of personality behind Donald Trump. So again, this election is fascinating for a whole bunch of reasons, but the strength of the parties themselves, and where the Democrats have a strong party and the Republicans really are driven by one individual. It's just a stunning contrast.
Let me ask you about the choice that Harris has to make. What is going to be the calculation for her as she picks a running mate?
Well, they're really thinking about a couple things. One is the electoral prospects, right? So obviously, there's a lot of conversation about, do you go with somebody like Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, or do you go with somebody who helps you win another Midwest state, or do you go down to Kentucky, right? So they're going to think about, I think they're really thinking about picking somebody from the Midwest that might help them electorally. But at a deeper level, the president is also thinking about who do they want to work with for 4 years. If we go back to Barack Obama, when he initially selected Joe Biden, that really wasn't about electoral success. It was more thinking about how could he help the administration. So presidents are people, right? And they're thinking about two different things. What helps me get elected? But who do I want to work with for 4 years? So Kamala Harris is going through that process right now. Who's going to help me get elected? And then who do I want to work with?
Bill, is the country ready for a woman, a black woman, to be president of the United States?
Well, we shouldn't be naive to say that gender and race are not going to matter, right? Those things are still here.
It's already coming out. A lot of Republicans are saying she's the DEI candidate.
Absolutely right. And so one of the things I'm watching for is is this a repeat of 2016 when those themes, especially sexism, were a central part of the campaign? We've had some progress over the last 4 years. The Republicans find themselves in an awkward position. They were prepared to go after Joe Biden. They're not clear how they're going to attack Kamala Harris. And if it becomes racism, if it becomes sexism, I don't know if that's going to be successful this year. But I think we should absolutely expect it, right? I think those are still themes that we're struggling with, and I think we're likely to see it. I just don't think it'll necessarily be successful for the Trump campaign.
And as Harris takes over this campaign machinery, trying to get her message across the United States that she is ready for the job, what kinds of things will you be listening for her to tell the American people?
Well, I think we saw a preview today when she was speaking with her campaign team, and she was talking about looking forward, right? So I think that's going to be one of the first contrasts. They're going to frame the Trump campaign as looking backwards, trying to take America back in time. Kamala Harris is arguing she wants to move forward. The other themes that came out as she was talking about reproductive rights, talking about prosecuting Donald Trump, right? Thinking about this campaign as a prosecutor. So I think we're going to see a very, very different vision, a Democratic vision, but something that was different from Joe Biden, right? And over the next couple days, they'll really flesh that out, because this is so important as they essentially reintroduce Kamala Harris to us, not as a vice president, but as a presidential nominee. And so that's really important, that they set the narrative and they tell us what we should expect out of her candidacy.
Big question whether there'll be a debate coming up. Thanks a lot, Bill, from North Central College. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
Good to chat with you.